right, let's jump into the A block.
Apple's move to block user tracking spawns new digital ad strategies. This is coming from the Wall Street Journal. As Apple Inc. moves ahead with long-promised plans to make it harder to target certain iPhone users with ads, advertising companies and software developers are preparing for major disruptions to the $400 billion digital advertising industry. Apple will ask users in a pop-up if they want to allow a given app to track their activity across apps and websites and other companies. If users choose to ask app not to track, quote unquote, the apps will no longer be able to collect a user's advertising identifier without permission. That ad ID is widely used by digital ad and data brokers, but many experts use to reject tracking amid concerns about privacy. And one of the big things about this actually was with Facebook. And Facebook comes out and they say here, the social media giant has said it would launch its own in-app pop-up message to tell users that tracking helps personalize ads and supports businesses that rely on ads to reach consumers. The approach of dueling pop-ups might befuddle or annoy users as the changes are rolled out and implemented.
And it sounds like Google has already said it plans to comply with Apple's new rules. At the crux of this very important issue comes down to you, Gino, and it comes down to me, and it comes down to every other single person who downloads these apps on their iPhone, because we're talking about Apple here, right? And so Facebook has an app. And even though Facebook is its own service, in order for the Facebook app to be on your iPhone, you have to put it through the Apple App Store. So Apple has a controlling say what happens when we access that Facebook app or any app for that matter through our iPhone. That's where this is coming into factoring, right? Facebook collects the user data of you and I, and it shows us advertising when we are in the app based on things we're clicking on, based on things we're liking or commenting on, or things that we're interacting with. That's how it works. So why this is such a big deal is because how Facebook makes its money is from advertising. And the way that they get companies to do advertising is they tell them that you can target people based on who they are, where they live, what their preferences are, things they like, things they do, etc., right? Okay?
Correct.
So if Apple is now going to give all of us an opportunity to say, hey, before I open up Facebook, I don't want Facebook to track me inside the app of Facebook. Apple's now giving me that ability to do that. Think about if billions of people all say, I don't want Facebook to know what I'm doing when I'm in Facebook. Then Facebook is going to lose all of that tracking data to be able to sell advertising against that data. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense.
So what Facebook is saying that they're going to do is they're going to have their own version of a pop-up that tries to tell you and I, even though Apple's giving you the option to not be tracked, if you let us track you, that's what they're saying here. If you let us track you, then the ads that you're going to see will be more relevant to things you like. So in other words, what Facebook is saying is you're going to get ads one way or the other, because that's how we make our money, is through ads. So we're going to show you ads whether you like it or not. You're not going to get out of not seeing ads, right?
Correct.
If you want these ads to be completely random, then go ahead and accept Apple's button that says don't track me. But if you would rather have the ads actually be connected to things you like that interest you, then tell Apple that you are okay with us tracking your movement inside the app. Now, I ask you, Gino, are you going to opt in to letting Facebook track your movements, or are you going to opt out to letting Facebook track your movements?
Geez, put me on the spot.
That's right. I'm putting you on the spot, and I'm about to ask all of our users as well, or our listeners. What do you say?
I'm down to try to see what happens if I don't let them track me.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah, just to see what it's like.
I think I'm of that same cut of that same cloth. So what this is saying here is Facebook has already cautioned investors that this big change that's going to take place could drastically impact their revenues, their sales. Because theoretically, if all of us opt out of them tracking, if all of us opt out of Facebook tracking us, then you could imagine a lot of advertisers might not want to keep paying to do advertising on Facebook because it's not targeted advertising anymore. And what does everybody want? Everybody wants targeted advertising, right?
The math is running through my head right now, and I remember last year or around this time, I learned that, and I could be wrong, but I learned that Facebook does about $8 billion of advertising a week. So you do the math on that, 52 weeks. Just like the article says, over $400 billion of lost revenue for Facebook. So I just wonder how hurt Facebook will be losing.
Well, the industry as a whole is $400 billion.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what slice of that pie that they specifically get, and it wouldn't impact the whole amount. It would impact a big chunk of it. To your point, a big chunk of it could be impacted. It might be a couple $100 million. It might be 50 million. 50 billion could be a couple $100 billion. We don't know yet. We have to wait and see. What we have to wait and see is how many people are going to opt into Apple's thing and say, "Don't track me." That's what we have to wait and see what happens.
Right.
Okay. But it's big news. This is a huge breaking news article right here. So thank you so much for digging this up, because if any of our listeners are advertising on Facebook and Instagram, what do you guys think about this? Maybe a two-part question. Are you going to opt in to letting Facebook track you, or are you going to take Apple's option and say, don't track me? Let us know in the comments. Talk to us here on Anchor. Leave us a voicemail on the Anchor app. We'll air it on the air here on the program. What do you think about that? Are you going to opt in, opt out? And do you think how much money do you think Facebook might lose if a lot of people, like the majority of users, say, yeah, don't track me? How much money do you think you'll lose, right? Let's get some feedback going here on the app.
Wow.
All right, so we look forward to your comments.